Steve, they say a week in politics is a long time. It's been a week. How are you?
Oh, it's been a great week. I'm good. How are you, mate?
All right, yes. Still reeling from the general election and what's just happened out in France, so it's all going off.
Yeah, it's going off that well. I almost lost my voice. I'm that gruff.
All right, well, you need to explain that because some people obviously would not be reading our comments. Gruff McClueless.
I'm Gruff McClueless, so very clueless and very gruff. So what can I say?
Most people like you, Steve.
Gutted. So I made some predictions, didn't I? As did you. How did you fare with your predictions?
I'll never make a pollster. I don't know if I did well or not. I predicted, just like you, that Starmer would win.
Yep.
Not by the great majority that he did get, although we'll talk about that in a moment. He got far more than I thought. So did the Liberal Democrats. And I thought, I think I said, it might be in my head, but I'm sure I said it might be a trouncing Conservatives. Although they came second, they're in disarray.
Totally disarray.
Which, again, we'll talk about. And how did you do? You were given percentages.
Well, I gave percentages, and I said that, like yourself, that the Labour would get in, so Keir Starmer would be Prime Minister, so I got a big fat tick for that. Mm-hmm. I said that Labour would get 33 to 35% of the vote, and they got 33.8%, so I get a big fat tick for that. I said that Conservatives would get 17 to 20%. They got 23.7, so I was 3.7 out on my top end for them. So, 3.7 out of 100%, so that would give me 96.3% success rate, would it not? On my best prediction, I said Reform would get 19 to 25%. Well, they got 14.3%, so that's 4.7% out on my lowest prediction. So close, but no cigar. But overall, we ended up with the Reform Party coming third in terms of percentage of the votes. They got more than the Liberal Party. Although they only had 5 seats, they had 7 million voters, whereas the Liberal Democrat Party, who came third in terms of seats, only had 3 million. So it went Labour, Conservatives, Reform, Liberal, which is what I expected. So considering I'm just a clueless old gruffalo, I don't think I was that bad, really, was I?
It hasn't been eating away at you at all, has it, Steve?
No, it's hard, isn't it? I know these armchair critics like me who sit here and pretty clueless and haven't lived much of a life and haven't had any exposure to the world. And I know it's difficult, but there we go. That's what I am.
You're absolutely correct with the percentages. It was, however, the lowest turnout of any election, bar one.
60%, wasn't it? Just over 60% turnout?
Yeah, and I would say that's possibly because the Conservatives, who would have voted Conservative, generally didn't bother. They didn't come out, so they were missing. Overall, it was the biggest gap between the amount of votes and how many seats were actually won. So that's one thing to bear in mind. And although you rightly say the Reform got 5 seats, they were projected beforehand to get far more, but they did well. But they're on line with the Greens, I believe. I think Sinn Féin got more than they did. 14% of the vote is not to be sniffed at, especially from a party that had nothing. But I wonder if more Conservatives had come out to vote, that percentage, I think, would have been a lot lower.
Yeah, I think that the Reform Party will always have a problem because they will draw their support from the disaffected Conservatives.
Yeah.
And they will also increase their footprint when, as you say, when Conservative voters don't go out and vote. But the problem with all of this is I still stand by my comments regarding Keir Starmer and the Labour Party and the Conservative Party. There's nothing to choose between these people. They're globalists. They are capitalists, either capitalists full on or pseudo-capitalists. I honestly don't believe that these politicians have their ducks lined up in terms of what they are serving. They're serving the people of the country. Now, I really hope, and I genuinely hope this, that the Labour Party completely surprised me. And I would be the first to cheer them on if they surprise me, but I suspect that they won't. I suspect that what will happen is that the Labour Party over the coming years will do what the Labour Party always do, which is just centralise, more bureaucracy, more regulation, more forbidden red tape, bigger public service spend, more debt. And we then roll around. The Labour always get us in the crap in terms of debt. Then you get the Conservative Party who come in, who then have to pull the reins in and tighten the belts and sort out the fiscal nonsense that's gone on. And then they balance the books just in time for the Labour Party to come back in and take over and spend the money again. It's just a silly merry-go-round.
Interesting fact, though, but if you look at the current state of the books, it's absolutely shot. I mean, this trust tanked the economy.
Yeah, that's not surprising.
They just wiped out 30 billion on PPE, a scandal. I don't think the Conservatives can look in the mirror and think we did well on the economy and balancing of the books.
I would say that what was the economy looking like pre-COVID? What was the economy looking like but pre the Ukraine war? But particularly pre-COVID, because I think that every Western democracy has been shafted with the finances from the COVID debacle. And what can we learn from that? Well, we can learn a lot from that, couldn't we? Like, don't believe people.
I'd be interested to see what people say, because with years of austerity in the UK, some people may think that the economy wasn't that great, especially with Brexit.
I wonder how much that's been played a part. We are very limited to what we can see on the media. And let's be honest, we don't get a very good impression or a very good range of views on the media.
No.
You'll get one narrative only. And if you actually want to understand what a country's like, you've got to go there, right? And we haven't been there for many years in general. So you're very much guided by what you can see.
I'd like to talk about the media towards the end, if you don't mind. We were talking off air regarding them, weren't we? And reform. But can I just push back on something? You said there's nothing...
You push away. Push.
Come on, Groff, you're used to this.
I'm used to it.
You rightly say there's not much in terms of policies to distinguish one party from the other, Labour from Conservative and vice versa. And on policies, you're correct. I wonder if you could distinguish them on competency.
No, you can't, Mark. You're absolutely right. You can't distinguish them on competency because they're all incompetent.
Oh.
So, no, go on. Go on, mate.
There's a great video by John Bercow, who was the ex-Speaker of the House. And he was talking about the list of Prime Ministers going back 15 years. And he came to Johnson, Truss and Sunak. And he said that they were the three least able to be Prime Minister. And we had them in a 5-year cycle. He reckons that they showed utter contempt for the electorate. They eroded the trust in politics. They wrecked the economy and the public services. And then he gave some figures. I don't know how accurate these are, but I'm assuming they're based on proper data. 4.3 million children in Britain are in poverty, and 3 million are in need of food banks. In fact, someone said there's more food banks now than McDonald's. And with the competency, when people lost their seats, obviously they were being interviewed, and it was probably the wrong time to interview. I think they probably needed a week or two to process it, but there was one who was picked up. Marcus Fish, Conservative, he lost Yeovil. And he said it's about time now that the Conservatives should shut up shop and dissolve, because the only people that managed to get through are very right-wing. Very few are centre-left of the party. And he worries that they're no longer going to be what we would recognise as Conservatives of old. And Robert Buckland, when he lost Swindon South, he was the first Conservative to go. He said he's fed up with performance art politics. It's all about people trying to get opinion pieces out and getting attention. You know what we talked about before? In other words, incompetent. And however much you think of Keir Starmer, he has to be, I think, applauded for what he's done with Labour. They were unelectable in 2019. And now he's had one massive win. In fact, what someone wrote down quite cleverly, Keir Starmer, will he steer karma? The Starmer tsunami. So perhaps we should distinguish him, because I don't know if you noticed in the news today, it would have been yesterday perhaps, thinking about it. He is the first Prime Minister to make a female Chancellor of the Exchequer, who is old Bank of England. So why has that not been done before?
Don't know. Maybe there's not been somebody that's been able to be put in that position for whatever reason. Don't know.
Yeah.
No idea. Starmer, I don't know. He might do a great job. He may do a fantastic job. But it's been quite interesting watching some of the clips about his flip-flopping, though, on various things,
Who
going
doesn't
up to
know?
Liverpool. Oh, I will never do this. And then all of a sudden now he's up there talking about, oh, yes, now we're going to do this. No, we'll never do this. And now we're going to do this. Oh, we'll never do this. Oh, now we're going to do this. And this is just my view. The biggest problem with politicians and politics today is that the average person, I'm just an average person, not an academic, not highbrow, not anything, just an average person, don't trust them. No longer trust them. And I spent 40 years working with these people and I believed what I used to do. But now I don't trust them. So I think to myself, if I can be turned off like that, and I've got some knowledge, maybe not much, but some, then other people who have got less knowledge, they're probably going to be even more turned off. I have yet to see a politician who really stands by what they say that they believe, which is why I said last time we spoke, I had a lot of time while I was completely against the extremes of some of his views. Tony Benn was a politician who I admired because he was a man who stood by his principles. Other people who don't stand by their principles, I have very little time for in the public service space, because they are nothing more than bureaucratic faces who will spin like a weather vane in the wind. Sometimes I think that what we need is leadership that doesn't do that. You need to be set a course. You need to follow that course. And sometimes, we know this, we're ex-sailors. You've got to go across the Bay of Biscay and it's going to be choppy. Well, you know what? You set your course and you ride it out. You don't flip-flop everywhere and do a zigzag plan to try and take a different route or pull in at this port or turn round or go back. You sometimes just have to do the hard stuff. And I don't honestly know that there are that many politicians, and I don't know enough of the British politicians side of things anymore to know that there's people that have got that backbone. They all seem to be cut out of the same mould. They all seem to be of the same cloth. They all seem to all have some sort of significant wealth input or significant, I don't want to say privilege. Some people have worked really hard to achieve what they've got, which gives them privilege, but they've worked to attain it. But they just all seem to be the same. And I do find it troubling when you have the now Prime Minister of Britain saying that he'd rather deal with stuff from Davos than with Westminster. What was the context of that? I mean, again, I haven't seen all of that. You get sound bites. So I'm very aware that there are sound bites that get cut out and edited and made to make it look like it was something different. If within the context that was about how would I accept it? If he was talking about a load of business people coming together and getting deals done and no red tape, and so I'd rather be at Davos, no red tape to get deals done because Westminster's a nightmare, then I'd be going, yeah, okay, now I can understand why he'd make that comment. But I'm not sure that was the context. It doesn't trouble me personally because I don't live there, but it troubles me for the country because I still love the country. And I still love people in the country. I do hope it works out well for them. And I really hope it works out well for Labour. Yeah. I suspect it won't. Look at Tony Blair, mate. The Labour Party was completely and utterly unelectable before Tony Blair came in. Completely. It was a total shambles.
Yeah.
Under Neil Kinnock and all of that lot and Michael Foot, Blair comes in and he makes it electable. And then what happens to the Labour Party? Well, it turns to custard. And the people in power take us into a war in Iraq, which was completely unjustified and on no evidence. You think to yourself, what are these people? What are they really serving and who are they really serving?
A couple of things are to be drawn from the results. I think for the first time, we saw the increase in independents, especially in my old neck of the woods, Leicester. Leicester South, I think, had an independent, and that was a protest vote, really, because Labour and Gaza. But it was noticeable a lot of religious and racial lines for the first time. Secondly, in the future going forward, we spoke about this off air. So the results are Labour got 412 seats. They increased by 214. The Conservatives lost 252 seats to give 121 seats. So in the future, when we see them facing off each other, there's going to be quite a lot of Conservatives in front of Labour there, the opposite side. 72 Liberal Democrats now, they've done well. They've picked up 64.
Yeah.
The Scottish National Party lost 38. They're down to 9. Then we come to Sinn Féin with 7, no change there. Others, I think that includes the Independents, 7. plus 4. Reform, 5. Now, I've mentioned 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 various things before we get to reform. But I've noticed straight away who's getting all the headlines, who's being interviewed constantly, despite the fact only 5. Yes, a percentage that was quite respectable. The newspapers have to sell news. Media has to make a profit. They're going to get people who will agitate people to watch and get angry and annoyed. And reform is one of them. But I don't think it was a good result for reform at all. And I'll be interested to see what going forward Mr. Farage does. And you see already a misrepresentation of things in the news. I think Angela Rayner is the Deputy Prime Minister now. And she was shown in unflattering angles deliberately in newspapers and in the media. And you can just tell that already they're starting to put things out there as not being fair or accurate.
It's interesting, though, isn't it? Because the media are mostly very left-leaning.
Oh, I would say right-leaning in the UK.
No. Look at the way that they've slammed the Conservatives. Conservatives are the right, and they've slammed the Conservatives for everything. So the media have no scruples about who they pick on. They will pick on whoever is going to sell their papers. And so let's be honest. The people to pick on in the Labour Party will be anybody who's female, because that's going to sell papers, because it's going to make eye-catching headlines. Anything to do with the global connections with corporations and things like that for the Labour Party, that will be banged out there as well. There's going to be all sorts of stuff that the Labour Party are going to be picked up on. They're now fair game. They're in power.
Yeah,
so now
absolutely.
They've got to stand and they've got to deliver, and they're in power. What I would expect to see would be the opposition parties getting a little bit of airtime when they're just banging on about what Labour aren't delivering. And then that will get hyped up. It's all a game. It's all a game. None of this is real.
Until you lose your job.
Yeah, well,
until you have to get in debt because of the mismanagement of the.
But it's not
economy.
real for them. It's not real for them. I reckon that what they do is they all get together afterwards. They sit down around a big table, and they all have a beer, and then they go, "Okay, mate, right. So you're out the door this time, right? Okay, Nigel, how are you going to play this then? Oh, well, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do that. Okay, well, what we'll do is we'll come into bat then, and we'll knock this one away and knock that one away, but we'll let you get a run on that one. Oh, okay, then that sounds great. Yeah, that'll keep my punters happy. Then you keep your punters happy, and then we'll give it a few years, and then we'll give another guy a turn in the seat. It's all a game. It's all a silly merry-go-round. I honestly think that the way that things have gone, technology has advanced too quickly, information flows have advanced too quickly, the mechanism and governance has not advanced quick enough to keep up to pace to be able to deal with issues. And so we're dealing with archaic institutions that are not nimble and not flexible enough to actually deal with stuff. They're just not. You know, the amount of times that I was working in the world that I used to work in, and I would say, I need this particular piece of equipment and I need to get it done and I need to get this for this particular job, etc., etc.
Are you prepared to say what that is for people who don't know?
No, I'm not. But within the job that I used to do, there would be certain procurement that I would have to go through the government in order to get certain things, and it would take forever. If I went to a private company that where it came from through the procurement and just went straight to them, I could get it the next day. Everything is so bureaucratic. Everything slows down. Everything is so risk averse. The world needs to have nimble, agile, flexible forces to respond. This is why a lot of the armed forces and various enforcement intelligence agencies, etc., have like QRFs, quick reaction forces, where they can turn on a dime and actually get dropped into somewhere very, very quickly in order to achieve an objective and then get out again. And that's what we need, almost need something like that within our political action. And we don't have it. It's archaic and it's slow and it's a monstrosity. As I look on it from the outside, I can almost see it heaving and groaning under the weight of all of this.
Yes, but I personally think in current times, that's a good thing. There's too many knee-jerk reactions that if they'd have taken a bit more time, a bit more consideration, a bit more oversight.
Don't mistake quick reaction for knee-jerk reaction. Quick reaction is taking decisive action based on all of the available facts that you can muster, and then you go and deal with whatever you need to deal with. That's not a knee-jerk reaction, that's being fully informed, but it is cutting away the red tape, and it's actually just getting in there and getting a job done very, very swiftly without all of that bureaucratic nonsense going on around it. But, I've been institutionalized. I'm now no longer institutionalized. I'm outside of the bubble, and I find it really intriguing. And maybe I just find it frustrating because everything that I served, I now question and go, why the hell did I do that? Why the hell did I do that? These guys are clowns.
Well, talking about that, one thing I think I would like to see moving forward, and this happened in the last days of the election, some of the smear campaigns that the Conservatives tried to do were quite pathetic, in fact, and they were hauled up for it. And someone said on an interview, I forget who it was, a pundit, and this was about a week out, saying that what's happening now is that they're so desperate to keep in power, Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives, they're starting to use Trumpisms, the same language that was used by Trump against opponents. Now, we're not that personality-led in politics, or should not be. Keir Starmer said he wants to make sure that his Fridays, much as possible, will be spent with his family. And therefore the Conservatives came out and then, well, he's only going to be a part-time Prime Minister. And they did do the thing that they did last time when Blair was gunning to get into the Premiership. And the Conservatives said, well, they've been out of power so long they don't know how to govern. They wouldn't know what to do. As soon as they walk through the door, they'll be lost. I would love to get rid of that nonsense. Because
it's so nonsense.
Well, it is nonsense, but it happens all the time. And I'd hate to think that that's where we're heading. And potentially for the next election, it could get worse.
Well, that's why we have a civil service. That's why we have a public service. So that when a minister comes in, and I've done this, I've sat in various rooms with ministers. They've come in, and I've now sat them down, and I've then briefed them on the state of affairs that I was dealing with. And I bring them up to speed. And that minister for that department gets a full briefing on and brought up to speed on the current state of events. So if that minister's then got a question, they come back to me and they say, hey, Steve, what about this? And you go, yeah, of course, Minister, we can talk about that. That's the whole beauty of a public service. That's the whole beauty of the civil service. And that's, great. So,
yeah, but smearing your competitors isn't.
No, well, of course it's not. But that's politics, man. They're shockers. Look at blooming Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
Look, buying. What did they do? They paid for Republicans to actually vote or do something, didn't they? What was it they were up to? They were paying money to promote, advertise Republican candidates who were to the extreme in order to put off Republican candidates who were not so extreme. They were doing all of that sort of nonsense. Oh yeah, Hillary Clinton did all of that. What about the Hunter Biden laptop and all of the hiding of that, and then saying that it was all Russian?
Hang on. What about Pizzagate? That was made up. Trying to make out that Hillary Clinton was part of a nefarious coterie.
Oh, mate, I'm not saying that one side are hands clean and all the rest of it. I'm saying they're all the same as each other. Not one of them could lie straight on their back.
They couldn't tell the truth about lying.
No, you know that a politician is lying when you see their lips moving. And that seems to be the way it works. So I honestly don't think that there is anything to choose between them. Somebody said on our last piece that Keir Starmer's a real humble man, real lovely guy and all the rest of it. He may well be. The proof will be in the pudding, and we will see what happens with him. And I intend to watch this man and see what he does and see how he does it. And I genuinely wish him all the very best with it. I think he's got a hell of a job. He has got a hell of a job. Because I think the control of the Labour Party is probably going to be nearly as difficult as governing the country. Because the Labour Party will always slide further and further and further and further away from the centrist view. And this is exactly what happened with Blair. And they go further and further and further and further away to the left. So they drag them back to the centre to make them electable. Because people don't really want the extremes, which is why the right won't get in. The extreme right won't get in. They'll want to see a moderation. They're quite happy with having a little bit of a seesaw flip. A little bit left, a little bit right, a little bit left, a little bit right. But they don't want the extremes. And who the hell would? Who the hell would? You go from a communist state to a fascist state. Who the hell would want to work? I wouldn't. Nobody. Well, I just don't think people in their right mind would. But
Yeah,
that's my
yeah.
view.
Yeah. There has been talk about the difficulty that Starmer will face. Is
Oh, gosh, he's got his work.
Well, he now has to deliver because the economy is such a state. And will it be possible? And we shall see. But if he doesn't, all that's going to do is throw the electorate into more extreme party hands.
And that's always the worry, right? And you think about the landslide victory that Jacinda Ardern had here. Absolute landslide. And then you think of the swing that went against her because she didn't deliver. And what do you end up with? Well, you end up with a very different government. And I think that is always going to be the concern. I like the fact that Keir Starmer has gone country first, party second. That's his tagline. And I think to myself, good on you, mate. If that is what you genuinely think, and if you can manoeuvre and keep control of your party so that actually happens, country first, party second, then you might be in with a chance. Clearly, the man's no fool. You know, he's a barrister. He's been the Crown Prosecution Service lead. He's clearly a smart guy, right? There's no doubt about that. But I do wonder whether or not he will be able to hold the ship nice and steady.
He's more likely to do that and to succeed than any other that was in power for the last 3 or 4 attempts. Although he's got a mess to clear up, he will have the calmness and the ability to hopefully wade through it. And let's hope he puts in people, because the problem is he's only the first amongst equals. There's a whole cabinet of people who will be taking on the mantle of various departments. They are just as much needed now to have a quiet hand. And this is the thing about the British politics system. How many people get positions and then they get oofed out quickly because of some scandal, inability? It's almost as though they won't be there long. So hopefully that is not the case for once.
So who's going to be the first to fall?
In the cabinet, don't know. Possibly the Chancellor of the Exchequer if the economy doesn't pick up.
You reckon she could be the first out the door?
It'd be a difficult thing to pick up as a hot potato right now, isn't it? So,
isn't it just?
Yeah.
Isn't it just? Yeah. Yeah, you might be onto something there, mate. That could happen. But, we'll see what happens, mate. Wish him all the very best of luck, and the Labour Party all the very best of luck. My suspicion, looking back over history, will be it ain't going to take anywhere pretty, and there's nothing else that's got anything else to offer.
Yeah, they're not going to be there forever. Forever? With an H, ever. They're not going to be there forever. Let's hope they use their time wisely.
That's all you can hope for, fella. All of us only have a limited period on this planet, and we need to use our time wisely.
Well, Steve, we've got 5 years to keep apprised of politics before we do the next prediction. Unless there's an emergency snap election like Macron.
Snap election somewhere.
Order. Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? But no, it's interesting, and hopefully we'll see where it goes.
Okay.
God willing.
Make me a kip, I'll be back home for breakfast.
Very good.